Okay, so I've been debating how to lead off this particular episode because I think we've done the cliche, jam packed, special episode, can't wait, tons of information. That's all true about what's upcoming. But I'll just put it to you like this: I love all of our guests. I appreciate anyone spending their time and energy and research with me here in this podcast, something that they do for free, just to come and hang out and have a good time. I love all our listeners. I love all our viewers. Thank you very much for helping us grow this and possibly passing on to friends and family. But I would be lying if I said I look forward to every single episode equally. Partly because some of them are just me sitting here talking to myself. But secondarily, it's because there's a certain joy and an excitement with guests who come back on an infrequent basis and when guests are brand new. And I have been looking forward to this episode with the Ringer's Danny Kelly and the Ringer's Danny Heifetz of course, the Ringer and the Ringer NFL show, Ringer NFL draft show, and Fantasy Football for weeks. Hung out with these guys at the Combine. I've known Danny Kelly for a couple years now. As I said last year, I think on our episode, it's like the kid in college who you shared a class with, might have been friends with, would see later out after a couple beverages. You're like, oh, hey, Danny from Ingles 200. Yeah. I don't see him that often. When we do, it's a great time. And you are going to have a great time here today. Yes, the episode went off the rails a little bit. Not as much as when Tom Curran and I were debating about whether the Patriots should draft a quarterback or trade back from number 3 in an empty conference room in the basement of a JW in Orlando. But we go deep on the Patriots. We go deep on the draft. We go deep into topics you are not going to expect. And these guys are the best. So naturally, with this episode, I think I've now successfully hyped up. I'm going to take 6 to 8 minutes to delay them further because there are a couple of things I want to get to. Just mentioned, so at the owners' meetings, our last episode was there, fresh off of Gerard Mayo's press conference, in addition to some more draft talk. I want to give you the full picture of the owners' meetings because, to be honest, it is one of the stranger events. I think it's the weirdest event on the NFL calendar, primarily because it's an event strictly for the sake of being events. Now, it's big news, right, that the NFL completely upended its kickoff rules, that they banned certain tackles. And now a lot of other things are going to be reviewable, and teams might even get a third challenge. But this is the Ritz-Carlton equivalent of, it probably could have been an email. But the NFL, being the NFL, says, oh, media come in. We'll have breakfast with the coaches. You get to hang out for 30 minutes. Everyone's going to be walking around just to be seen, just to talk. When in reality, like, the NFL could do most of its business or do this business as it does most of its business behind closed doors, sometimes via Zoom, and go on with itself. But it needs the attention and makes the event. So 3 daddies down there. I am not complaining, first of all, off the top of going to this Ritz, which was connected to a JW by this long hallway. And it was very similar to the Combine in that, you're walking down. It's maybe like a 6 to 8 minute walk from either hotel to the other side. And there are conference rooms shooting off one side. And then it's just a wall or a series of windows looking out the back where you're going down. Oh, and there's Sean Payton. Oh, and there's the Vikings GM. Jerry Jones is scribbling in a notebook circles to establish what the hell going all in means and doesn't mean. And John Lynch and sometimes Gerard Mayo. And so I just want to take you behind the scenes here, not to again criticize the owners' meetings, but to get into what it was like, what we saw. You hopefully have written what Doug and I posted at thebostonherald.com, or maybe even in print, save newspapers, and to get a glimpse, obviously, of what everything Gerard Mayo had to say, and then Robert Kraft on Tuesday, which we have not talked about here on the podcast. But that's kind of the background. Like, I show up on Sunday night. Doug and I had flown in. We did not stay at the JW or the Ritz. Spent most of the 48 hours down there, actually inside, as beautiful as it was in 80 degrees. You arrive, the head coaches had just taken their photo. I run into Mike Reese and Tom Curran, who had nabbed Gerard Mayo for a couple of minutes after the photo to ask him about the quarterback. He says it's a priority. I go, great. Well, we missed Mayo, but what are you going to do? There's a large welcome event for everyone in the league on Sunday night. Introductions. It's an hour-long presentation. They do a cocktail hour. Obviously, none of us are invited being in media, but it's a mix of all the owners, team presidents, most, if not all of the GMs. Elliot Wolf, sorry, doesn't count just yet. And the head coaches, plus a couple agents milling about. Again, the Ritz, which has a main hotel bar, another bar and restaurant downstairs, the floor level, which spills out into this large outdoor area behind, and then a restaurant, which somehow has a Michelin star attached to the hotel, neighboring long hallway to the JW. Again, big bustling hotel bar. So everyone's just kind of milling about. And you go into Monday, where the AFC coaches breakfast is 7:45 to 8:15, in one of these conference rooms off this long hallway that connects the two hotels. It's beige, big round tables. You're there for 30 minutes. Reporters get there early, sit, and you chit chat. And so the AFC coaches go Monday. On Tuesday, the NFC coaches go. And in between, the GMs, some of the owners, some of the team presidents are arranging with their PR staffs to do a little side session with reporters. And for New England, this is new. But in talking to reporters for other teams, having gone to previous owners' meetings, this is standard operating procedure. So Robert Kraft, right after the NFC coaches went, 7:45 to 8:15, this large beige, like very regular ass hotel conference room. Outside, back patio of the Ritz. We all have to drive in, get there, talk to him for 10, 15 minutes. And he had a lot to say. And then after that, most of league business is done. A lot of it was done on Monday, where they're meeting about, again, new rules. The head coaches get together, issues they have. Some of the assistants, great story in The Athletic about sharing salaries for assistants. Not really any assistants who were there, assistant coaches meeting. But that's just kind of the event. You take the parts of the combine that you've heard me talk about before, where the the draft part of it, evaluating prospects, is a front for doing league business like tampering in free agency or possible trades and laying the groundwork, and new teams and coaches getting together and kind of meeting with other teams to figure out any other business they want to do. And then at night, the league televises measuring prospects. They run, they jump, they lift. You get medicals, and the teams meets with those prospects. But at least that front serves a purpose. This is just like, come show up. Ian Rappaport company will do a shot from outside the hotel. ESPN will be set up in the hallway. If you've watched any ESPN over the last couple of days or did on Monday, Tuesday, you can see people going back and forth. I was among them. It's reporters who, we all wear this red lanyard like you're a freshman that just arrived in college, and everyone knows you're a freshman because you're the only dork wearing a lanyard in the first weekend of the semester. But anyway, that's what this is about. And so on Monday, when Gerard Mayo sits down with us, I think did a really good job as far as addressing what the heck went on in free agency, their plans in the draft. As he said, he wanted to provide clarity, and he's being genuine about that. Now, he's not sharing all of their plans with the media and fans. That would be stupid. But I wrote a column after entitled that Gerard Mayo's growing pains are going to coincide with the Patriots. And some folks, as I could tell immediately from mentions, are freaking out about this. So before, again, we get to Danny Kelly and Danny Heifetz, I just want to give a little bit more space to that column because I stand by every word that's in there. I understand that it got misconstrued or misunderstood. But the point was this. The growing pains, the pain part of it is behind us. The Patriots getting roasted for not spending in free agency and not burning cash, which he had said. There are issues now with the expectations he set after his introductory press conference, kind of wink and nod commitment to Steve Burton saying, what are you going to do with the number 3 pick? Well, we're going to take a player, a good player at a position we need. You put the puzzle pieces together. And that's not a serious comment, right? Entirely. But it basically says, hey, we're going to take a quarterback. And now, as Gerard told us on Monday, all options are open. And so the column opens with him making a joke. Again, a memorable quote, a line. It was an easy PR win. He jokes about having a glass of orange juice as he sits down and says, shout out to orange juice. And this is a nod to a famous photo of Belichick from the 2015 owners meetings, which I don't know what the list looks like of things that Bill hates. The Jets are on there. Losing is somewhere. Select coaches that left New England, probably Eric Mangini. And then there's the owners meetings where he has to meet with reporters for 30 minutes and did, sometimes upwards 45 or an hour. Anyway, so Gerard jokes about that photo, which has become a meme and it's been all over Twitter forever. And so 10 minutes later, Gerard is now sitting in a mess of his own making because in this instance, the OJ had spilled. This is not a big deal that he made a joke about Belichick. In my opinion, it's not a big deal he spilled orange juice. This is not crying over it. It just illustrated a larger point to me that his growing pains, again, the pain of setting an expectation at the introductory press conference about probably taking a quarterback, about burning some cash, and a comment he made getting up while leaving an interview with WEI and said in a joking tone, were unforced errors in a PR way. And so was this. None of them individually too serious. Something that just illustrates the Patriots need to get on the same page from a messaging standpoint. And Gerard reset his own messaging at the owners' meetings. This was the growth part. This is the good part. It's just to say he's a young head coach. He's a first-year head coach. He's going to make mistakes. The man said it himself, okay? And so in using that example to look back at the last 2 months, as we all go and like, oh my God, the Patriots are not only going to stink this year, but they're going to play the kids, and it's going to be, I mean, the over-under for their win total is 4.5 right now. Says it all. We get this. We know this. My point was it's time to give Gerard some slack and understand he's going to come along because we've all rightfully gotten on him for those unforced errors and the things that sounded good initially, the joke, the comment, the burn some cash line, that give it a couple of weeks or just 10 minutes. And he's kind of in a mess that was unnecessary. All right. And that was it. You can read the column or you can just continue to blast me on Twitter. There are plenty of people doing that. And that's fine. It comes with the territory. Again, here just to walk through part of this start of the podcast. Last thing. Actually, that's a lot too. I promise we're getting to the Dannies. Robert Kraft, he spoke Tuesday. I wrote that they need to preach patience as far as the rebuild. And in his 10 to 15 minutes with the media, covered a lot of topics. The line that had my eyebrows raised the furthest, which you know because there's no hair above my eyebrows, was my hope and expectations are to make the playoffs. That's crazy. That's nonsense. But a minute later, he says, we know we have to be patient when speaking about the rebuild and addressing a question about how do you be urgent, right, about winning, while also understanding that there's a patience that comes with any type of NFL rebuild or any rebuild in pro sports. Other than that, he dragged in Calvin Ridley's wife, not girlfriend, for why Calvin Ridley didn't sign. He talked about the dynasty where he wanted a lot more on-field focus rather than the controversies. Basically, everything fans had said. He co-signed and copied and pasted Devin McCourty and Rodney Harrison's criticisms about their comments only being used to highlight the negative and kind of stoke the controversy part, but nothing about the positive. And so Kraft's doing what he always does, align himself with fans. But he stopped in one particular area. The last question he got, and this was about, as we talked about before, the most common criticism of the dynasty. And it's that Bill Belichick was unfairly maligned and had too much blame left at his feet in the final episodes here for why things went the way they did and inevitably ended. Things were always going to end. And Robert said, I would love something to the effect of, I want to be very clear about this. I would love to offer a statement. He said it was a privilege to have Belichick in New England. He said he looks forward to inducting him in the Patriots Hall of Fame one day. And in the middle of this answer, because that was the start and that was the finish, he went on 20 seconds about Tom Brady. And so when asked specifically about the dynasty and Belichick's time here and how he was framed, he went to, it was a privilege in the Patriots Hall of Fame and Tom Brady, not the doc, not the dynasty, not Belichick's portrayal. And that to me was telling. And so it wasn't as great of a press conference in late March. And folks have been critical, are fair to criticize and whatnot. My thing is, with all of this, whether it's Mayo over the last 2 months or Robert Kraft just on Tuesday, messaging matters. And the Patriots have to get on the same page here, whether it's the two of them or Elliott Wolf. And so hopefully Kraft moving forward stops talking about playoffs because that's going to be nuts. Okay, you have to understand where you are. And this messaging in late March, where they're not losing games, they're not blowing draft picks, they're not screwing up trades, right? But messaging is what this is about, is to prove to the outside, fans, media, themselves even, as a first-year head coach, first-time de facto GM, that you know where you are and you know how to get out of this. Because the more the messages conflict or they raise the bar too high with the playoffs or burning some cash, in reality, inevitably brings you down, unable to sign free agents. When you start losing games in September, we're all going to look back and go, what the hell was that? Folks have already started. Hopefully there's less of that. But that's what this is about. Just lessons as far as PR goes and the messaging. Because if they're screwing it up with the media and are having to walk things back, it will be worse if this continues once players come back and the coach is in there and they're not consistent about what the expectations are, because that'll affect everyone in the on-field product and have a trickle-down effect. That's what all this is about. Okay, last things, and we're getting to the Danny and Danny show. If you want to join the show, excuse me, just like those two, and Nick Roy, who is our newest MailFan for the end of podcast MailFan segment, email me, shoot me a tweet, reply to me on Twitter with a mailbag question and proof of donation to Boston Children's Hospital. We've been doing this segment for weeks now. Been a big success. Thank you to everyone who has donated to Boston Children's and come on the show. It's been awesome to get to know a lot of you. And so you can do this. We have a little bit of a line now, but you will be on the show for 6 to 8 minutes. Maybe we'll get upwards of 10. Send me a mailbag question next week. No mailbag here today, but we do have Nick Roy from Virginia. We went from Bay State with Carlos last week. Bay State, God, Bay Area. Can we get to the Danny soon enough? Bay Area to Richmond. Nick was good. He donated. He sent me a question. He came on the show. You can do the same thing. You can also rate and review. I have not asked this for a couple of weeks now. But the more you engage with the show, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, the faster we grow. You've seen it with Kendrick Bourne coming on, Devin McCourty, James White, Tom Curran's been back. And yes, I have relationships with all of these folks. But it's not an accident. The more this show goes on TV, the more views it gets. The clips on radio shared across Twitter, people hear about it. And by the time I ask, I don't have to explain. It's just a simple yes or no. And you can help that happen with more ratings and more views. It takes 2 seconds. It would mean a whole lot to me. Okay. Do that. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. All the Pats Interference content, exclusive draft content coming up this next couple of weeks at _Andrew Callahan. It's my same handle as you'll find on Twitter. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Rate and review. And if you want to come on the show, donate to Boston Children's and hit me up with a mailbag question. Okay, that's enough. It's a new era, not just for the Patriots, but for the Pats Interference podcast. Brought to you now by Prize Picks, the largest daily fantasy sports platform in America. I'm making player picks, watching the Celtics, points, rebounds, and I get to test my skills like you can on Prize Picks this season because it's the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. And then here's the best part: quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, an enormous selection of players and stat types, which all make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app, plus a review policy, which means you get your money back in case of injury, the only DFS platform to offer an insurance policy. Again, Prize Picks has been a ton of fun with the Celtics. You can also go with the Bruins, any number of different sports, games, players, plays, and options. So right now, go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. All right, as promised, Danny Heifetz of The Ringer. Danny Kelly making, I think, his third, maybe fourth appearance. Heifetz, finally, welcome to Pat's Interference. How does it feel to make your debut, new friend?
It's incredible. I can't wait for you to see how different Danny Kelly is when he's around me.
I got a glimpse at the combine, and it's surprising that I brought both of you back together at the same time as opposed to doing one-on-ones, given how our last night there, where we how would you say it went outside of Prime that night? Famous Steakhouse in Indianapolis, finally getting you through someone who did not want you to be there, and that person was the bouncer.
I'm from New York, but I very briefly saw what it must be like to be from Southie, because the second that this bouncer kind of singled me out for no reason, just you and Doug just went into like, oh, you're messing with Heifetz, like you have no idea what's coming your way, and you just were like, no, this guy's our mortal enemy, and I felt like such a loyalty that I was like, wow, I'll come on this guy's podcast.
That was so random. So for people that don't know, basically we were trying to get into this bar at the end of the night, and it was so full they weren't letting anyone in. I think Heifetz literally just went over there and was like trying to figure out what was going on, and then the bouncer was like, "You especially are not getting in ever, pal. Back off."
I'm very annoying. DK will be the first to tell you I annoy people all the time.
You are annoying. In that instance, it was completely innocuous what you did. I think you literally were just like, "What's going on? What are we doing?"
I turned a corner and tried to enter a bar, and the guy was like, how dare you?"
He's like, "If you ever come near here again,
then blackballed." So, well, first of all, Heifetz, I appreciate you making Doug and I sound much more badass than we were. We were more like, "Oh no, we'll loiter. Like that's as far as we got. We've got your back like 6 feet away." But this guy pulled the, "Well, I've been here 30 years" card when you were like, "Hey man, I've been coming here like the last 8 combines, and the deal is normally you just walk in. What's the problem?"
He said, "I've never seen you before." I'm like, "Yeah, it's a bar. Why would you why would you?"
There's like hundreds of people here. What are we talking about?
It'd be weird if you remembered me.
Yeah. And then Mina comes out and goes, "It is way too much in there." Like it was peak combine in terms of everyone was still there. No one had left yet. She was like, "That sucked." And we still insisted on going in. Anyway, we got in.
Yeah. I was like, "Let's just go to another bar. It's fine." You're like, "No, we're going to wait here till we get in." We get in, walk in 10 feet, and you're like, "All right, screw this noise." And then turn around. We went to a different bar after.
Yeah, we left immediately.
Yeah, we won. That's how that happened. All right. Ideally, we do some winning here for the Patriots, because my homework to you was to come up with 4 different scenarios. The best case scenario for the Patriots in day 1 or 2 of the draft, the worst case scenario for the Patriots, the highest risk reward, and then the funniest scenario, which I really just want to start with, but we have to save dessert for last. This was harder than I expected. I just told you guys that off air going, I literally finished my prep 2 minutes ago. And normally this is a night before. How long did this take you to come up with these?
Couple of minutes. I feel like I've been running through so many scenarios with doing the mock drafts and things like that over the last couple of months. That I have I've already formulated my thoughts of like what the worst thing that could happen and what the best thing that could happen for the Patriots right now. So, is it okay if I have a tie for the best case scenario for the Patriots?
Oh yeah.
There's 2 scenarios I really like for them.
Okay.
But no, it didn't take too long because I've already kind of like tried to think it through with all these mock drafts that I've been doing.
Yeah. Heifetz?
Same for me. I mean, honestly, I think that it's hard to get this far into draft prep without figuring out how the top 3 or 4 are going to go. So I've actually put a crazy amount of time into it. And then similarly, like the Patriots just being on an edge of the first, the second, third round. It just, I actually think this draft is incredibly well designed for the Patriots to come away with a really good, I think Pats fans will be thrilled by Sunday of the draft weekend.
All right. Well, it sounds like I crawled over glass so both of you could run with your draft prep. Take you 2 minutes.
Yeah, you just stepped on your back and jumped off you. Exactly.
Yeah, I laid on the hot coals so you could walk across them. Especially texting Danny Kelly some of my initial ideas. Being like, yeah, it's kind of a jump. I don't think Seattle does that. Okay, I'll go back to square one.
Well, we can talk through it. But yeah.
Yeah, we will, because I have one. It's still in there for the highest risk reward. And I think it's a big, solid bet, but it's just probably too much. All right. Best case scenario for the Patriots over day 1 or 2 of the draft. In case you missed it, they have number 34, the number 3 pick, the number 34 pick at the top of the second round, and number 68. So that's what we're working with here. Danny Kelly, as you see that, what's the best case scenario for the Patriots?
So, like I mentioned, I have 2 best case scenarios with this. My first best case scenario for the Patriots was and again, this is just going to point towards our biases. My bias in particular is that I really like Drake May. So, best case scenario is Washington takes Jaden Daniels or they trade out at number 2 and someone takes Jaden Daniels. Drake May is just sitting for them at number 3, which I don't think would happen in any other draft. I think Drake May would probably go first overall in almost any other draft. So having Drake May land at number 3, just, sprint up to the podium, get your new future franchise quarterback, and be good with it. The second best case scenario that I kind of envision is getting that grandfather offer, or is that even a term? I don't know if that's
Godfather
offer.
Grandfather
I can't pronounce words. DK can't get phrases.
I mixed them up. I knew immediately when that was coming out that didn't sound right. But anyways, get that Godfather offer where they get like 3 first-round picks plus to move off of the number 3 spot. I've sort of talked myself into the idea that they're not ready for a quarterback unless it's Drake May, and that's just like you got a new GM in town. Not in town, but you got a new GM, you got a new head coach. These guys are probably not super excited to like start the clock on like their future and their job security or whatever. Like build the foundation of the team. Get the offensive skill players around a quarterback before you take a quarterback kind of deal. And so that's where I've sort of talked myself into of just trading back, getting a huge amount of draft capital, kind of like what the Bears did last year. And building a foundation, whereas you can actually drop a quarterback in there and he can have success. So those are my 2 best case scenarios for day 1.
How much draft capital are we talking?
I think, well, for instance, like if the Vikings are the team that want to move up, you get 11, 23 plus a future first, plus maybe like a couple swaps here and there on day 2 and day 3. I don't know exactly what it ends up being, but like if you're talking about 3 first-round picks to really build the foundation, I think you jump at that.
See, that's my worst case scenario for them.
Interesting.
In there,
okay,
but I had Tommy
that's
Curran.
my highest risk reward scenario.
Good. Okay. All right.
Love
Spoilers
it.
all over the place. But I argued with Tommy Curran on our last episode here to the point where he said, "You're too frantic." Absolutely leveled me with this comment. Too frantic for someone whose feet are still on the ground, because I was just so worked up that you couldn't pass a quarterback over for a bunch of what people perceive as, it's a question mark. You don't know. There's nothing guaranteed at the top. There are no guarantees anywhere here, right? Less so, at 11 and 23 and beyond, but we can get to that. Heifetz, what was your best case scenario?
So I think the best case scenario, honestly, threads the needle of what you're saying. Could a trade be good? Could a trade be bad? Well, do you build a foundation now? Do you build a quarterback now? The best case scenario to me is really easy. It's you are able to do both at the same time. The best case scenario is the Patriots get Drake May with the 3rd pick, and Drake May is the next CJ Stroud, and you have that guy. Mm-hmm. And then the second round, the Patriots are able to basically get a first-round tackle that falls to the second round. So you get either like a Tyler Guyton, a Jordan Morgan, a Graham Barton, either a really athletic but raw offensive tackle or a really good offensive tackle whose like arms are a little T-Rexy. So for whatever reason, they fall to the second round. And then that guy plays for the Patriots for 10 years. And then the third round, every year, 15 years, the Patriots have like passed on like the Deebo Samuels, the DK Metcalfs, the Keenan Allens in the second, third round. And then the third round, the Patriots get that receiver. So they get both worlds. They get the quarterback, but they also still get a tackle and a receiver that are with him for the long haul. That to me is easily the best case scenario. And it's not that far-fetched.
I like it. That's largely where I landed too. And I was looking at Jordan Morgan, and then I went to DK's draft guide. He's at 49 lately. And I just go, I can't take the T-Rex at the top because my argument has been their best case scenario involves a trade into the back of the first round, right? To get a receiver, an offensive tackle. It's a fifth-year option. It's all of that. And then I'm looking at the Guytons of the world and the T-Rexes, and I'm like, they're either right tackles or there's an obvious, deficit here with some of these prospects. And then the receivers are so deep, you might as well just hang around in the second round. So I likewise start off with Drake May, number 3. Done, set it, and forget it. I actually went trade back from 34 to 39 with Carolina, which is about a difference of 22 points in the Rich Hill trade value chart. So they end up saying, we'll take the 5 spots back for your 4th round pick, which starts day 3. You can auction off, take the best day 3 prospect there, and we'll give you a 6 and another kind of pick swap. They get a tackle, which is someone you didn't mention, probably because the pronunciation goes like this. Kingsley, DK, tell me if I nailed this or not. Sua Mataia.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the person to ask in terms of if that's correct, but
no, he's the key pronunciator of the words. No, Kingsley, I believe it's Sumataya.
Sumataya is how I've been pronouncing it.
Okay.
I could be wrong. I acknowledge that I'm not 100% sure I'm right on that, but yeah, Sumataya.
So Kingsley S had a 9.3 out of 10 relative athletic score, long arms, played both tackle spots, top 50 recruit, comes out of high school, goes to Oregon at BYU. And then I had them trading up to number 40 with Washington, which is like take 68, take a future 4th, one of our 6, and you move back because you've got enough picks, Washington. You'll be fine. And getting Troy Franklin, who I love as like a big play threat and can play inside now.
I love that. Yeah, that's perfect. I didn't realize we're getting quite that specific. Otherwise, I would have devised some trade backs with the 2nd round pick. But
it's okay.
I really like
your
that.
Fallback is a whole freaking draft guide. So if you
if only he had ranked the top
just read by 50,000 words or whatever it is, and that's good.
Yeah. Do you like any of the tackles that Heifetz and I just referenced more or less for the Patriots? Like when I look at tackles, I'm looking mostly at what the Packers prefer, right? Because Elliott Wolf spent most of his time there in the NFL. They have to be athletic. They typically have 33-inch or longer arms. So, of course, Jordan Morgan coming up 1/8 of an inch short, insert dick joke here, is like an issue and might not be.
Who among us?
Yeah. But I think at some point, if you're in that range, like early second, you're compromising somewhere, right? This is not going to be perfect.
Right.
Do you see guys that they should like more than others?
I mean, the Sumataya one I think makes a lot of sense. He's played on both sides of the line. I think with the Packers too, they like guys that can play multiple positions, so you can go out there and field your best 5 guys at any given time. Injuries happen all the time on the offensive line, so having that versatility and flexibility is really important. That's why I think another guy like Graham Barton makes a lot of sense for them. I didn't actually, off the top of my head, know how long his arms are. He's, I think, generally thought of as an interior offensive lineman. I don't think that means he can't play tackle, but he might just have the body type.
His arms are 32 inches and 7/8.
So basically 33. I mean,
this is the new 5'11 and a half, right? Like no offensive tackle is saying they're less than 6
also,
feet.
what an arbitrary no. Don't even get me started on
it's also like not super scientific because where do you exactly start measuring the arm? I'm sure.
All right. We'll do if we want to go into this.
Are we talking about the base or the
who decides where the base is? And then don't even get because also if you go on fingertip, it's like you don't block with your middle fingertip, you block with the hinge of your wrist. So anyway, don't get me started.
I don't know if people realize how small 1/8 of an inch is. Like that is like negligible amount of time.
I do want to just say though, if you're interested in these guys, DK does that NFL draft.
This sounds like a pitch you've made before. Like,
it's just how you use your length. That's really what all that matters is what you're getting.
How you swing the sword. That's what matters. So, but at NFLdraft.theringer.com, DK has scouting reports on all these players. So if you're like, who is Graham Barton? DK has awesome scouting reports at NFLdraft.theringer.com in like an insane amount of detail on all these players, including to the 1/8 of an inch on their arms.
There you go. Anyways, it's a negligible amount. But I like Barton for them because of that. He essentially could, in theory, I think, play like every position on the offensive line, and that is a huge value. Like I said, because guys get hurt, you have situations where you need to fill spots on the line, and you want to have your best 5 guys out there. You don't want to have some rando practice squad guy out there protecting your quarterback or whatever. And so, I see that versatility as a huge bonus. I think those are the 2 guys that really stuck out to me. I'm not quite as high on Jordan Morgan as a lot of people are. I don't know. It just felt like there were like the first time I watched him, I just felt there was a lot of like bear hugging involved and just off balance, and he just wasn't as smooth. And it's hard because when you're watching guys like Troy Fautano, I should say, and some of these like earlier first round guys, Talise Fuaga, they have incredible body control, really light feet. They're just such easy movers. And then as you get further down, like you mentioned, you start to get there's issues that aren't present with the higher draft pick guys. And I just felt that Morgan was a little bit sloppy with his footwork, a little bit sloppy with his body and balance and things like that. I mean, I still think he has a lot of potential. He's got really good size and athleticism and all that, but I just didn't think he was quite as like smooth and coordinated.
Yeah, and he's coming off the torn ACL, right? For folks who don't know, left tackle at Arizona, some see him as a guard long term, and he's athletic and he's got good run blocking, grit, I would say, but is a little unrefined. How much of that is the time missed due to the ACL? How much of that is just like, this is who the dude is, and they tend to fall into the early second round? Who knows? But he should be on fans' radar, I think, just given where the Patriots are picking and obviously where their needs are. It's interesting. We're all Drake May guys, right? Is this close for you, Heifetz? Because I know Jaden Daniels is what, 8th on your board, DK?
Yes, I believe so. Right around there.
Compared to 2 or 3 for Drake May.
I think it's different strokes for different folks. I think that the Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, I think that it's less necessarily about people disagreeing on what they are able to do, and it's more about how you value their skill sets and the questions that are associated with them. I think Washington goes Jaden Daniels in the draft. If you ask me right now, we can go into why. Basically, I think Jaden Daniels is a better fit for Cliff Kingsbury, and people say, well, Drake May ran an air raid offense in college. Cliff Kingsbury's a raid guy. I'm basically like, Jaden Daniels ran a more complicated offense in college, and if he can do that, he can do an air raid. But he's got this rushing element that I think will just appeal to Cliff Kingsbury. And frankly, Cliff Kingsbury's offense is not a Kyle Shanahan detail-oriented one. It's more like, hey, yeah, if you can just make that work, go for it. And Drake May has elements of that, but I think the Jaden Daniels speed will really appeal to the Cliff Kingsbury, and I think he's going to have a lot of sway in the Washington decision. So I think that I like Drake May more, but this really does segue into the worst case scenario, if you don't mind. I feel like now I'm shadow moving.
No, good job by you. You're being a good
foreshadowing.
I would say there's sometimes you actually, like, I think in every kind of decision making, even if you know the most important parts of what matters, it's easy to overlook them. What do we always say? The best ability is availability. The worst case scenario for the Patriots is you take Jaden Daniels, the quarterback at LSU, the Heisman winner, and he gets hurt 3 games into the season because he has not demonstrated whatsoever an ability to protect himself on a football field. Jaden Daniels, I think Nate Tice, our friend at The Athletic, compared Jaden Daniels to Johnny Knoxville. I look at Jaden Daniels, frankly, as someone who thinks he's like a human bumper car. Like, I've never seen a quarterback gets tackled outside the pocket backward very rarely. Like, once a quarterback gets past the line of scrimmage, you don't see them get hit so hard they go backward. Jaden Daniels does it all the time. He just doesn't run out of bounds. He doesn't slide. He just tries to truck everyone. And in the NFL, it doesn't work. Anthony Richardson is 2 inches taller. He's like 40 pounds heavier. The guy who went to the Colts last year, and he got hurt 3 games in because he couldn't really protect himself. He's trying to truck linebackers. The worst case scenario is Jaden Daniels gets hurt 3 games in, and he has a bad offensive line. He's got bad receivers. Jaden Daniels is constantly scrambling. He's constantly hurt, and his eyes never go downfield. He's already a quarterback. The criticism is he scrambles to scramble, not scrambles to throw. He's learns to do that.
What you're talking about is, I'm going to go straight until I hit something and not veer off the road a la Footloose. Like, I'm going to lose, which is basically win in chicken every single time, and you can't survive that way, let alone in a place where you're playing chicken anyway because the Patriots are not going to block anybody next year.
That's perfect, and I'm going to steal that. He's the Joker in the scene from The Dark Knight. He was like, I want you to do it. I want you to hit me. Hit me. And then they hit him. So that's my worst case scenario, is it's a combo of injuries, but also in trying to have Jaden Daniels try to protect himself, he loses what's magical about his game with the scrambling, but also he never learns to, scramble to throw. And so that's my fear. I don't know what you think, DK, if you think I'm just wrong on that. But
no. I think, yeah, I mean, that is, I don't know if that's the worst case scenario in my mind. I think my worst case scenario was like the Patriots just staying at 3 and taking like some random player, like not a quarterback and not Marvin Harrison Jr. or Neighbors or whatever, like just some corner. Yeah. Like a tackle or something where in my mind, it's like, yeah, maybe that player turns out to be a good player, but you're sacrificing the potential. You have an opportunity cost from trading back, like, and gaining like a massive amount of draft capital here. In theory, you have the theoretical opportunity cost of drafting a future franchise quarterback. And so I guess like I would just see this as sort of like a cowardly way to do it. I don't know if that's actually true or not, but like just taking like the top corner or the top tackle and just being done with it, like to me just is the worst case scenario for the Patriots, just because I think there's so much opportunity there to either take a quarterback or trade back and get a massive haul, if that makes sense.
So I had ruled this out even as a possibility in my wildest imagination, because that would be so bad. And
Yeah.
it's actually the right call, because I've listed the trade back, and they get to 11. They do this deal with Minnesota. Everyone's talked about 11, 23, first round pick, firstborns, like throw them all in there. And then all the players that they would want to take, the tackles and receivers, are gone. Like maybe Brian Thomas Jr. is hanging around at 11, but you're like, nah, do I want him there? And so it's interesting, because if they do take a player that's a non-quarterback at number 3, you're right. It's not just, oh, we think he's a better player, but you passed up on the opportunity cost of surely everyone from like the Giants at 6 and the Vegas obviously behind them is going to call to say like, hey, what's it going to take? And you should be able to get that, a huge call, but the single player is not going to outweigh that in the long term.
Yep.
Bad. All right. So here's what happens with mine. I just gave it away. They trade back with Minnesota. You get 2 extra first round picks. The first is Amarius Mims, left the tackle project out of Georgia. Right tackle, first of all, hasn't started a full season. Second of all, massive dude, but they reach and say, oh, we'll just flip him over to the left side because he's a blank slate. Number 23, they take a white corner, which I know is the topic of conversation at the combine with Cooper DeJean. For some, Heifetz jump in at any time, but he's not a receiver. He's not another tackle as insurance. They take Bo Nix at 34, and then at 68, go Blake Corum at Michigan. So you have the tackle.
I actually would like to Bo Nix at 34 is your worst case scenario, or Bo Nix at 3. Who knows? But yeah, Bo Nix. Anything
and apparently, Michael
Bo.
Penix, they just are pretending does not exist. Like they're not going to meet him at the combine. They're not spending their top guys over at the pro day. Like, he's just off. It's interesting.
Kind
of Boomer
rude,
Bo.
Honestly.
No, Penix.
Oh, Penix.
Yeah.
My thing with Penix is I love Penix as a player, but kind of. I love him as a college football player. My fear with Penix is I'm not a doctor, but 4 season-ending injuries is like so many, and also he's like he enrolled in college in 2018. There were 7 Spider-Man movies that came out while Michael Penix was in college.
that specifically.
How many were good?
Yeah.
Well, dude, the Spider-Verse ones are incredible. Have you seen the Into the Spider-Verse?
Yeah,
I've never seen those.
They're incredible. The Tom Holland ones are good. They're way better than the Tobey Maguires of my youth.
Last one felt like an easy nostalgia grab, but I'm with you. I mean, Tom Holland on his own delivered.
DK, if you haven't seen the Spider, it's on Netflix.
No, I know. I've heard so many things about. I've watched almost all the MCU stuff, except for some reason I've never gotten into the Spider-Man movies. Oh. So that's, I guess, next on my list.
It has to be.
I know.
Just have another.
There's too much content. How do people watch everything? I don't have time to watch everything.
You're just grinding tape.
I know.
You're just watching. You're too busy watching Talise Fuaga at Oregon State.
Too busy watching film, and I can't watch films. Get it?
Okay, 2-minute timeout for you. I would say
in the box.
Paternity and maternity leave is probably the answer there. Like I don't know how anyone's watching all of that at the same time, unless you're forced to sit at home. Or maybe house arrest. That would be my best answer for like
we do our shameless plug. We do the Ringer NFL Draft Show, and you can listen to that wherever. It's DK, Craig, we've been Solek, and Solek's about to have a kid. Craig and I don't have kids, and anytime Craig and I start talking about, I don't know, the vague concept of free time, DK just is like, oh, you guys have no idea.
You start talking about like video games you're playing. I'm like, who has time to play video games? What are we talking about? How do you have any free time? I don't understand this. Where's
Ironically, I mentioned the Spider-Man video game yesterday, and DK was like slack-jawed. Like, you have time for a Spider-Man video game?
video games?
I was just going to ask what you're playing, so you can do this for 2 minutes while DK's in the penalty box.
God damn it.
Are you a video game guy?
Not really. I mean, I have an old N64 behind me, which is like my ultimate escape on the small TV, and we'll fire up All-Star Baseball 99. We've got Mario Kart there, GoldenEye somewhere laying around.
So I have this great situation. My girlfriend, oh my god, fiance now.
Wow. Welcome.
Whoa, flex.
That you sent me money for drinks for a couple drinks today. Thank you for that. For when we got engaged.
Yeah.
So my fiance and I play Nintendo Switch Breath of the Wild, the Zelda game, which is like one of the best games that's ever been made. And I am like I fight the monsters and she does the puzzles. She's the brains and I'm the brawn. So that's my favorite right now. And then when I see her brother, he has the PS5 with the Spider-Man. Would you get zipping through Manhattan skyscrapers with like the Spider-Man being able to is unbelievable.
Oh man, that sounds good. I still have Ocarina of Time back here also as well, and need to finish that because I get 2/3 of the way through, and then we just give up, and Hyrule remains permanently dark forever. But as for things no one cares about,
DK we actually did just put DK in a box.
I was just reading Twitter. Just checking out Michael Penix's pro day numbers. You know.
Yeah. Jane Daniels leads off my highest risk reward scenario because of everything we just talked about. Like, he just is not going to avoid contact, ceiling, speed, all that good stuff. They take him at number 3. Here comes my trade up that DK shot down, but I think might have worked here now. Elliot Wolf, who worked with John Snyder in Green Bay, calls when they're on the clock at 16. Actually, he calls at 15. He says, "Hey, I got a deal for you. We're going to come up and you're going to move back to 34." And I get that's a big jump. So here's how it's going to work. We're going to give you Kyle Duggar, who is actually pretty upset with us that we put the transition tag on it, but he will be a box safety. We know you love those. This is Jamal Adams without an attitude, 90% of the game, and he'll be there for 3-4 years. Fan favorite. Here you go. We'll give you a future 3rd round pick to add to your chest because you don't really have a second here. So you're moving back, and we'll give you a 4th and one of our 6. So multiple picks this year, a player to go right away, and a future 3rd we'll probably regret. But we're good friends, and I want to make this work. So we come up to 16. What do you say?
I personally just don't think that's enough to move back 18 spots or whatever. However many it is. I mean, especially when you see the trade market for some of these players that we saw during this free agency period. It's like you're talking like 4th round picks, like conditional 5th round picks. Like, there's not super high draft capital being thrown around on player trades, and the jump back from 16 to 34 is pretty massive. And I just don't think like a bunch of day 3 picks is going to do it. That's just my impression. Obviously, Schneider has made some questionable trades in the past, so I'm not putting it.
I was going to give him 2 firsts for Jamal Adams.
Obviously, but I'm saying maybe he learned from that, hopefully. But yeah, he has made some questionable trades in the past. In my personal opinion, that's not enough, but we'll see.
Yeah, relatedly, the Seahawks just cut Jamal Adams and Quandre Diggs, their 2 safeties. So
yep.
But they signed Rayshon Jenkins, so I don't think it's going to totally scare them off of the safety market, but it's a way to marry that. And Patriots fans upset that I just dealt probably their 5th best player, which is a commentary unto itself. They have Marte Mapu and Jabril Peppers who can go play box safety. The one case you would make, even though it's a future pick, that 3rd round pick next year is going to be almost like a compensatory 2nd, right? Like, because they're going to be so bad. It's the early part of the 3rd.
So who are you trying to get with the 16th pick in that trade?
So here again, the risk is in giving up all of that. Supposedly, make it a future 2nd, whatever makes it work with GM DK over there. Troy Fautanu is who I want, the Washington left tackle. Well, I know you mocked to Seattle, but Fautanu, I think, checks all of the traditional boxes. The tape is excellent. He's well-rounded. He's versatile. He's athletic as hell. And in some consensus boards, they have him falling like low 20s. And I just don't see that given his pedigree and his premium position. But in this scenario, if everything hits and the trade is worth it, you have your quarterback and left tackle of the future.
Yeah. I like that a lot.
I like that a lot. I mean, just, getting quarterback and tackle and just protecting him and not having your quarterback run for his life and learning his first NFL adjustment being, I can't trust my offensive line. That to me is a win.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Fautanu, though, like either of you, feels like there's a significant, quote unquote drop off, right? Him and JC Latham, whatever order, flip them to like the next tier of guys. Is that fair from what I've read and the little I've watched from each of them? Like, what I've seen aligns with what's largely been written and ranked.
I
Yeah,
love
so
him. He's mean. I'm curious who you think, DK. I love
who's
Fautano.
mean? Oh yeah. I think he's like the smoothest mover in this whole group, and that's saying a lot because both Fashanu and Joe Alt are very, very good athletes and very smooth movers. But Fautanu is he just has incredible body control. And when you watch him mirror, when you watch him move around in space, when he's like blocking out in space, he just moves around like he's a big tight end. And I think that's just obviously going to be extremely, extremely helpful at the next level. The positional versatility that he brings also is going to be a big benefit because I believe he got a start at guard in college. So he's like got a little bit of experience with that. A lot of times these guys are projected to be guards at the next level, but they've never actually played it. So I just think there's a lot of things to like about Fautano. I would say Fashanu, Alt, Talise Fuaga from Oregon State, and then JC Latham and Mims along with Fautanu are like the big 5 or 6 or however many that is. 6. And after that, yeah, to me after that it's a huge toss up. Like it's what kind of player do you like? What kind of what do you want, a right tackle? Do you want a guy that maybe can play inside? There's just a huge drop off after that group.
DK, you compared in your guide, you have Fautano, you compared him to Elijah Vera Tucker, who the Jets took a few years ago. I think that's a really good comp because of everything you just said. Like a guy he's absolutely going to be an NFL lineman. Like he could be a guard tackle. Can I throw out another insane one that I think about with Fautano, which is like, he kind of also reminds me a little bit of Zach Martin. I don't know if that's like heresy. And I know that he's like not a tackle.
Well,
but
didn't Martin play tackle in college, right? And then he moved to guard.
Yeah, that's Zach Martin. The point is though, Zach Martin's going to be a Hall of Famer.
Right.
And I know that's kind of,
I mean,
heretical.
that's tough. But I mean, I think like when you're talking about like movement skills, athleticism, balance, body control, strength, attitude, there's definitely some parallels there. I could see that. Like you said, it's hard to compare a guy to like a Hall of Famer, but
yeah, I don't want to say it, but the way we describe him, I'm like, that's like, I think the way I think of Fautano is you take away the pronouns, that it's like, it just reminds me a lot of Zach Martin, and the measurables actually kind of similar too.
It's funny you bring up or the comp was Elijah Vera Tucker, and this was the old regime. But I remember in that draft where the Patriots instead took Mac Jones, they loved Vera Tucker as a prospect. Maybe Elliott Wolf doesn't co-sign on that, but between the versatility, the toughness, just the movement skills at that kind of size, Fautano I love as their left tackle, but they might just say, as Mike Onwenu got dubbed at the owners' meetings from Gerard Mayo, being like, he plays, I don't know yet. He might be anywhere. Like that probably could work, maybe, hopefully not, but Fautano fits that bill.
Yeah, I really like him. I think part of the reason I was hesitant to take the trade is because I think the Seahawks are going to really like him too. And
that's
this actually
common mock destination.
This goes really weird. Can I give you my highest risk?
Yeah, go for it.
So I think the highest risk reward by far is New England trades down with Minnesota and they swap the 3rd pick for 11. And I actually think New England could somewhat easily flip the 11th pick back again to the Saints at 14, because I think the Saints want to trade up, and I think New England can take a calculated gamble. And so in that scenario, the risk is obvious. The risk is that Drake May goes to Minnesota, where Drake May will have Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson, Jordan Addison, 2 tackles, and Kevin O'Connell at coach, and Brian Flores is the defensive coordinator.
And Josh McCown, old high school coach, is his QB's coach. Yep.
And Drake May is just the new CJ Stroud, but better. And you guys in New England is just like horrified for 20 years.
On fire. Yeah, for 4 years.
That's the risk.
It's like the Bills traded back to let the Bills traded back with the Chiefs to let them get Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, and imagine if they didn't have Josh Allen.
God, they got Josh Allen, right?
How insane that would be, right?
Yeah.
Or honestly, the similarity to me is that how much fun are the Panthers getting made fun of because they didn't take Stroud. But what if let's just say the Panthers had taken CJ Stroud and CJ Stroud was still just as good in Carolina. Imagine if the Bears hadn't gotten the first pick this year, how much crap the Bears would get for trading that pick and not getting. No one brings up that the Bears passed on Stroud last year.
I know
no one talks about it.
That's a great point.
So that's the risk of the New England trading out, is that Drake May is incredible, Jay Daniels is incredible, and whoever they give up. The reward, however, New England moves back. And I'm saying I would say actually 2 trades. New England moves back 11 spots from 3 to 14. They go back with Minnesota. You go back again with New Orleans. And so you could still maybe get Troy Fautanu at the 14th pick. And yet you would also be getting the 23rd pick in this draft, which could be like Brian Thomas, the receiver at LSU, might be there at the 23rd spot. So you could get your left tackle and you could get a number one receiver. Then you'd also be adding Minnesota's probably next year's first rounder. And I think you could get New Orleans's second rounder in 2025 to move back the few spots. So I think that you could get a future first, a future second. You could add Brian Thomas as a receiver, still get your left tackle. And here's the kicker. You take Spencer Rattler, the quarterback out of South Carolina, in the third round. So the highest risk, highest reward, you're trying to basically do the foundation. Here's a number one receiver. Here's a tackle. Here's the first rounder next year. Here's the second rounder next year. And we're going to take Spencer Rattler. And because it reminds Elliot Wolf, he's not even a GM, is he? Whatever we're calling Elliot Wolf, the guy who wrote director of scouting.
Yeah, director of scouting, consigliere, but he has final say. Yeah.
Elliot Wolf's dad, Ron Wolf, who's literally a Hall of Fame GM, right? Has this quote. Mm-hmm. If you get 1 out of every 10 quarterbacks right, you'll have this job forever, but you have to get 1 out of 10 right. And I wonder if he actually is going to throw I don't think they'll do it, but I do wonder if they just threw a dart at Spencer Rattler and put a bunch of pieces around him, what would happen to New England.
Rattler feels like among the quarterbacks, the highest risk reward anyway, just watching his tape. Like I remember going into, it might have been their Alabama game, maybe it was Georgia. And I was like, oh, they've got a shot because there's this upside with this kid who like just all of a sudden shows up and is an All-American, or he shows up and has been out the night before. And you can tell by the first quarter, like this isn't going to go well, which isn't to say he's an off-field risk, but like that was the dude you kind of knew transferring from Oklahoma to South Carolina. There's a reason he didn't go to Oklahoma to someone on like the same tier of school. Like he has that variance that's, causing him to drop now, but like the payoff, the reward part of that is you might think you have something in year 1 or year 2 if you take him and have him in a good enough situation.
Yeah, I'm a huge thing with DK. I talk about this all the time on our show, but with quarterbacks, there's a question of nature versus nurture. I think that sometimes we flatten the whole conversation about whether quarterbacks succeed because of where they went or who they are. And we kind of just talk about who they are. And it's like if Josh Allen had been the number 1 pick to the Browns in 2018 and went to the winless Cleveland Browns, who had 5 coordinators in 3 years, and Baker Mayfield went to the Bills, who had just made the playoffs, I kind of wonder what would happen. But similarly, I am obsessed with this idea of like, I think the best quarterback from this class will probably just be the one that ends up on the Vikings, and the Bears are also a good spot. And so that to me is the argument but it's no one thinks that way. So if you trade down from the spot, obviously you might get fired.
Yeah. DK, what was your highest risk reward before we get to most hilarious scenario?
Mine was right in line with what yours was, Andrew. Is Jaden Daniels to me feels like a very boomer bust type of quarterback prospect. I think his ceiling is certainly extremely high, like a Lamar Jackson-esque ceiling as a dual threat quarterback, a guy who can, and I think he's a better deep ball thrower than Lamar Jackson. I think Lamar Jackson's probably more, I mean, he's certainly at least as good as a passer and a better runner than Jaden Daniels, but Jaden Daniels to me has a beautiful deep ball. Really, really like almost Russell Wilson-esque accuracy on those deep balls down the sideline. So that gives him, the potential to do a ton of stuff on play action, all that stuff. And he's a very good runner too. So I think his ceiling is really high, but I think at the same time, players in his archetype, especially when it comes to the pressure to sack ratio in terms of like the amount of pressures that turn into sacks, it's very high. It's very concerning. His ability to deal with pressure, get out of jams, find the open man. It's in the same range as like the Will Levises, the Justin Fields, I'm trying to think of some of the other guys in this category, but basically, the Zach Wilsons, like guys that don't. Mac Jones. Well, I think Mac Jones was better earlier in his career, but then for some reason he just short circuited.
Yeah, but in college, like it was so infrequent, it was an automatic sack plus the mobility part, but just like, hey man, throw it away. Yeah.
So the big thing, obviously, I think the injury concern is real, but the biggest thing to me that worries me is just his ability to deal with pressure, know where his outlets are, know where he's going with the football, and get rid of it. Because that pressure to sack ratio, while it's sort of something that we're just talking about more and more lately, I think it is a real sticky stat. Like you don't tend to like get a lot better at that as you go along. It's just one of those things. It's like kind of who you are. It's
but the statistic, tell me if I got this right, DK. The statistic is basically indicative of the larger point that when Jaden Daniels is under pressure, he's not necessarily keeping his eyes downfield in the passing game. And so when he's under pressure, it becomes a scramble or a sack, basically, right?
Right. So that's not the exact same thing. The pressure to sack ratio is the amount of the rate at which you're sacked when you come under pressure. I saw someone post a stat, and I apologize, I don't remember who it was, but there's another way of looking at it, which was the number of pressures that turn into pass attempts was also astronomically high or low for Jaden Daniels. In other words, he was not getting rid of the football. He was just trying to take off and run. So that to me is like the type of quarterback he is. If he sees pressure, he's going to take off. This is what was a huge problem with Justin Fields and why he's not going to be a starter in the NFL maybe this year. You know what I mean? Even though he has incredible athletic traits, like truly incredible athletic traits. Like this is one of the most athletic players in the league. And he's not going to be a starter probably this year because he doesn't process quickly enough and he doesn't have answers when pressure is coming. And so that to me is a big worry with Jaden Daniels. There's a chance that maybe this isn't going to be a big deal with him in the NFL. He'll figure it out. But that is my biggest fear with him is his ability to deal with pressure and not just take off run. You know what I mean? And he has to start finding more answers.
I think that stat also speaks to just your feel in the pocket, right? Like Caleb has this Russell, Fran Tarkenton-esque, just like know when to spin around and get out of there. But his pressure to sack ratio is high because he continued to extend probably beyond the point of possibility, right? Like it wasn't worth it anymore. He would keep his eyes down when they needed to be. It's an entire sequence of decisions that you need to make. And how often are you making the optimal one, whether it's in the pocket, then you're outside the pocket, and what happens after that? So I think, with Jaden, it's almost as much like, do you feel the rush? Do you know when to get rid of it? And then what to do after when you have to bail? Like it's 100%. All of those things. Yeah.
Like I don't think it's an accident. You literally saw Jaden Daniels warm up the basketball before his pro day. And I don't think it's an accident. Like CJ Stroud does this bizarre pregame warm up with like basketballs and all this stuff. But Mahomes, like we talk about the baseball, but Mahomes is really good at basketball. And I think that the same way in basketball, like LeBron James closes his eyes, he can tell you where all the other 9 people are on the court. And like, you have to have that literally what's going on behind you, like just this otherworldly spatial awareness to play quarterback. And I think that what we're talking about is that like when stuff hits the fan, there's basically 3 kinds of quarterbacks. There are quarterbacks who are going to get rid of the ball really quickly. So they're low, like Kirk Cousins checking down in the face of pressure to Hawkinson with the playoffs to the line against the Giants last year or 2 years ago. And then there are quarterbacks who force the ball to turnovers. Like think Josh Allen early in his career, right? They're going to force it. We're not going down. And then there are quarterbacks who take sacks. Fields is a quarterback who maybe tries to scramble, but he's taking sacks. He's not necessarily forcing picks. And that the sack thing is indicative, I think, of the largest problem with play style, that you're not recognizing what's happening fast enough, or you're too confident in your ability to get away.
Got it. Anything else there that we missed on highest risk reward?
The other thing I was just going to go real quick and pair in terms of high risk, high reward, high ceiling, low floor, grabbing AD Mitchell in the early second round. Another guy that I really love his tape, but analytically speaking, like he was never very productive. His yards per route run, he was never very efficient. There's just a lot of sort of huge red flags from a prospect profile type point of view, even though I love his tape. I love his athleticism. So to me, those are 2 of like the biggest high ceiling, low floor players in this draft. If you guys double dip there, that's awesome.
Yeah. And he fits like the X body type that they need. They've got enough big slots, regular slots, couple of Z's. There's no X that he would just looks the part and probably gets a bump for a while. And then everyone's going, why did we take Aaron Dobson from Texas? Right. So that's about it there. All right. The funniest scenario, mine is really simple. And this is funny, not in the sense that I think fans would enjoy this in New England. I in fact think they would hate it. The Patriots just trade back in perpetuity. This is like Bill comes back into the draft room and he just says, I am the captain now for one day. And on that day, they do not make a pick in the first round, despite starting at number 3 overall.
I love
just
it's
Bill's dog is just the one calling the shot still.
Nike's back in there walking around. It's just Bill and Nike. Yes.
Yeah, you ever hear that story? The guy who started with a red paper clip and he like traded his way.
Oh yeah.
Like a house, he kept trading this, like he made 12 trades and got a house. I always joke that the Patriots under Belichick in the draft were like they start with a house and they just trade till they have like 1,000 red paper clips.
Yeah, but instead it's Dwight Schrute in the garage sale episode where he moves his way all the way up to the telescope and gives them away for fake magic beans, and so they're left there with AD Mitchell and Bo Nix.
Yeah, I was gonna say Bo Nix. My funniest scenarios is number one, just staying at 3 and taking Bo Nix, just like out of left field for whatever reason. They just decide that he's the best guy and they don't want to trade back. But my other funniest scenario is pretty much exactly what you said, Andrew. It's like trading back, taking a bunch of specialists on day 2 and day 3, and then like just punting the rest of their picks to next year. Like, oh God, like we're in the twilight zone. What are we doing here? This is the same place, same thing, same strategy. It's just like, I think that would be hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, let's be real. If it's funny, it's because it's,
it's terrible.
The Patriots are awful. It's either
Cringe
Bo Nix
comedy.
at 3 or just JJ McCarthy at 3 because Tom Brady told Bob Kraft to take the Michigan kid,
man.
and then
Yeah.
they rehire Matt Patricia as offensive coordinator, and he sucks. Like, that's easily the funniest.
That's actually somewhat realistic too, I feel like.
I think half of the people listening and watching this just shut this off. So we have that thought of Matt Patricia and JJ McCarthy and Robert Kraft taking hold of the draft room, which people really believe is going to happen. He did say, I wanted a top-rate quarterback. I don't think JJ McCarthy fits in there. Where is he on your board, by the way, DK? Like his odds of going in the top 3 have shot up according to odds makers, but I don't see it at all.
I have him at 25. I view him as like a first round type player. I just can't quite get there with the top 10, top 5 discussion just based on what he did in college. I think there's just an incredible amount of projection happening with him, and it's almost like a little bit, and this is, I'm trying to pick my words carefully because I actually do like him, and I think he could be a successful pro, especially like what Heifetz said. If he lands with the Vikings, like I'm probably going to regret not having him in my top 5 because he's probably going to go on and have like a Brock Purdy like career. But to me, like putting him in the top 3, top 5 is just, it's sort of like, what has he done to show us that he's this player? It's just like a little bit bizarre to me. But then again, I completely acknowledge like quarterback is like the wildest position to evaluate. No one's ever freaking right on this. It's just such a difficult position to evaluate, and so many variables go into it. The surrounding cast, the coaching, the mentality of the player, what kind of like mental, toughness he has, all that stuff, which I don't know about. I think
he meditates in front of the goalpost. So
yeah, it's performative meditation, which I don't know if that's a thing, but he's doing that, which is certainly something. But I don't know. I see some of the reasons why people like him so much. Like he will rip a pass up the seam. He is really good at, escaping pressure and getting out of the pocket. He's not like Caleb Williams about it, but he's like pretty good at like finding the open man once he gets out of the pocket. He knows where to go on third downs. Like there's definitely, he's played in like this pro style system. He's really good on third downs. He's really good in the red zone. So there's like a lot of, I think, flashes of what could make him a high level quarterback, but like he just hasn't really done it at the college level at a high level or consistent level.
But I guess my question, because I actually, for everything you just said, I'm like, okay, cool. So he's done it. He just didn't have to do it a lot. And I'm like, okay, cool. So if he can do it,
he's done it like a handful of times. You know what I mean? It's like with any of these quarterbacks, you could find like a highlight reel of like cool plays they made and then say, oh yeah, he's going to be a superstar in the NFL. Like Michael Penix. I could make a highlight reel 15 times as longer than JJ McCarthy of like his most incredible throws. And does that make him a good pro? Why is he considered a second rounder?
Yeah. Like everyone's fake, favorite Twitter fake or deep fake of quarterbacks is the lefties going right. They're like, oh, there's my bias on full display. It's interesting though, just to wrap on the quarterbacks, because like to Heifetz's point about nature versus nurture, all of the 4 top quarterbacks were affected by their situation vastly differently than they were a year ago, right? Like Caleb Williams, Drake May, still considered top 5 prospects, didn't really pay a price for having worse talent, and in May's case, a different offensive system around him. But JJ McCarthy goes from this like middling day 2, day 3 quarterback at this point last year to now a guy who might be in the top 3 conversation. And then Jaden Daniels obviously is self-explanatory, like the greatest statistical season you've seen from a quarterback after a guy who was like known, okay, he protects the ball well at LSU, but it's taken off. And that is going to determine like whether they, take off in the NFL in year 1 or obviously take a downturn. And the Vikings being a great contrast to what the Patriots will have, if the Vikings take a quarterback and the Patriots do too. One of the best situations for a rookie to step into and one of the worst. Like you could be wrong about a player as we traditionally take in this information or evaluate them in CJ Stroud, or you were right. He just happened to hit the higher end of his most likely outcomes on the bell curve.
Yeah, this is like a cop out that I like to use jokingly, even though I actually do kind of believe it. It's like it's kind of pointless to evaluate quarterbacks. Like I was actually never wrong about any of the quarterbacks. They just ended up in the wrong situation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I can sleep well at night, even though like I didn't get this guy right or whatever, quote unquote, I didn't get him right, because like the situation matters almost as much as like literally what the quarterback has in terms of traits and talent.
It's
I
not
believe.
me, it's you. Yeah.
So it's not my fault. I was wrong about Justin Fields. All right. It's the team's fault. It's the coach's fault. It's the receiver's fault. Something like that.
Actually, though, but it is.
I know
Awful.
that's I know that's what I'm saying. So I don't know. I joke about it because obviously, like, I'm trying to do a good job of evaluating these quarterbacks and give my genuine opinion. But I think seriously, like JJ McCarthy might land in a great situation and then be the best quarterback in this class. Like he might be better than Caleb Williams.
Mm-hmm. Man, that's insane to think about.
I know, but it's like actually very. I mean, if you look at the history of the quarterbacks in the draft, like it's pretty likely that one of the guys like taken later is going to end up better.
Yeah, I mean the top examples in the AFC are right there for the taking. You know, like Patrick Mahomes in his class. Granted, it's situation also the raw talent. No one was arguing that Mahomes should have fallen to 10 because of his raw ability. It was just scattershot tape and like how much of this stallion can you rein in? Josh Allen, same deal. Like the clay was there to mold. Who's willing to do it and bet on themselves? Granted, he stepped into a crappy situation and developed nonetheless because it improved around him, and his development was unprecedented. So there's some outlier stuff that I'm here referring to, but I think it underscores the point that, like, I don't know, we're both wrong and we're both right.
Lamar was one of the last picks, in the first round.
Yeah,
the Ravens passed
much
on Lamar.
better example. Yeah,
the Ravens took a tight end, a 25-year-old tight end, before they took Lamar Jackson.
CJ Stroud wasn't the first quarterback taken in his class.
But the Ravens won. Like he won an MVP. Lamar won the MVP, and they didn't. His own team didn't even believe that he should be the 25th pick in the draft. They had a tight end over him. It's like
Herbert.
No one knows.
Herbert was the third quarterback taken in his class. I think we made fun of the Chargers for that. Like at the time, like this happens all the time. So I am like, I want to get ahead of this and tell you, like, it will not surprise me whatsoever. Even though right now I don't think JJ McCarthy is the best quarterback in this class, I do think there's a pretty strong likelihood that he could end up being the best quarterback in this class, just because that's how the NFL works. That's how the shit works.
Mic drop. All right, we have one final segment, a couple minutes left before Heifetz has got to go. And Danny Kelly knows what this segment is because, well, you both do, but it's a spinoff of a bit that you guys have on the Ringer NFL Draft Show, and I think it's an accidental bit. Fiasco wasn't on there. Do you change how you say that?
That was a 1 in a million thing. I cannot even believe that happened. Heifetz, for those that don't know, Heifetz, we made fun of him for mispronouncing Maestro on a show, and then like several shows later, he was like, "I don't want to go through the whole Maestro fiasco again," and we were like, "No."
The worst parts, I haven't actually updated how I say it. I still think
fiasco.
I say fiasco in my
Maestro.
It was the pregnant pause and the confidence with which you said Maestro, Ben Johnson. Like it wasn't just not saying Maestro. It was I've got this right, and I'm 1,000,000% certain. And so I'm going to share my screen here, and what you're going to see on the screen if you were watching on YouTube is an article entitled 79 English Words that are actually Italian. And I would like my friend Danny Heifetz to do us all a favor and start reading some of these aloud, because you're a maestro of the fuck up, and I want this to continue as long as you can. Can you see my screen, Heifetz?
I cannot actually. DK, can you see?
I can't either yet. No.
Okay. All right. That's
Grant, I'm outing you as
technological. There we go.
Here we are. So here we are.
Oh no.
We're just gonna run down a couple, and then we're gonna get out of here. All right, let's start. Let's start.
Al dente.
Here. Okay, very good.
Obviously. Antipasto. Oh, bruschetta is how some people say it, but I say bruschetta because that's the right bruschetta. That's the Italian way to say it.
Yep.
How about this one?
Gorgonzola.
Good.
You're doing all the food ones. I'm not gonna get the food.
Yeah, don't do the ones. These are all foods.
Dude, this is like the spinning, kicking, and screaming. Like, how do you say spaghetti? Like spaghetti. Oh, Italian's easy.
Maestro.
Falsetto, crescendo, Yeah, yeah, that's yeah.
See, you're jumping on the ones that you know. How about this one?
Virtuoso.
He's
Okay.
passing the test.
This is
Fresco.
not what we wanted. Ooh, good one.
Not only do I know how to pronounce Pieta, I know what a Pieta is.
You don't get bonus points in this segment.
I've never
Oh,
heard-
we only
I've
have
never
two more. You know, Manifesto. You probably have one.
I honestly, yeah, I do.
You know, tarantula was an Italian word.
That's so
Tarantula?
This.
Gonzo.
interesting.
Magenta. Shout out to Blue's Clues. I never would have gotten that if not for Blue. That's a kid's show between
Sneaky
tarot cards.
Sneaky tricky. Last one.
Vendetta, Peaky Blinders, season
Damn
4.
it.
Hello.
Heifetz
Damn,
out
you
of
passed,
ball.
man.
Damn
It's
it.
the vowels, man. The maestro, the MA.
Let's try a different language. Go to like the German one. See how we do.
Ooh, this
well,
is a great call.
The Spanish will screw me up because I also the other one was I said
Spanish.
Quinyon Mitchell is from Toledo, Ohio,
Yeah.
and everyone's like Toledo, idiot, and I was like, well, I've been to Toledo in Spain, and I don't know, it's like I haven't been to Toledo, Ohio.
That's tough. See when this comes up. There we go. Shout out Babel, by the way, for giving us this bit. We're gonna try to squeeze a little bit more juice out of this because so far we're getting nothing.
We gotta
It's
get
111
one embarrassing
No,
one.
the Spanish
English
is
words
gonna mess
that are
me up.
actually Spanish. So here's
I don't
a
know if he
list
did
again for the book now.
anti-pasta. Anti.
Well, there's an O on the end.
I don't know. I don't
but it's
actually know how to
antipasta.
say that either. So
I don't even know what some of these are. Ooh.
oh, tornado.
How about this one?
Oh, burro. That's the donkey that brings you beer.
Burro.
Burro.
Yeah, this is
Oh, Joe
the
Burrow.
burrow thing is so funny to me because I was talking to these guys the other day and I was like, "Do you guys know that burrito literally just means a little donkey?" Like that's the funniest thing. It's like we're eating little donkeys over here.
Little ass. Yeah.
Roomba.
This is good. I feel like a
Quixote.
speech pathologist working
Ooh.
with a fourth grader.
Oh yeah, do
feel
that one.
way-
Do that one.
Oh God, no! This is a New York accent thing. Gorilla.
Damn it.
Gorilla, like the animal, but it's a
Yep.
gorilla. Armada. Conquistador.
He's getting them. He practiced.
You're not even overthinking them. I thought you might go, like Armada there. But you're following through. All right, a lot of these more food. You're good on food
The
stuff.
British say oregano.
Wait, there
which
it
I
is.
find
Burrito
hilarious.
little donkey.
Yeah.
Wow, yeah, I'm
Excellent. All right,
it's
half the
funny you
people-
bring this up because I literally yesterday morning was thinking about what are the words left that I'm still mispronouncing because it's just a matter
This
of
might
time.
be one.
Okay, so suave, but some people say
Damn it,
suave,
suave.
and I don't know if it's a bit or not. Is it a bit when people
Well,
say
there was
suave?
there was like a Rico Suave thing back in the day. I don't know.
That's a bit though. It's suave.
That's true.
I mean, I think most Americans say suave. Yeah.
Yeah, suave. I would say suave. All right,
Tomato,
last one
tomato.
because you're on
Tomato.
tomato.
Huh.
No, this one above the tomato.
Tomato, tomato. Oh, tamale.
Yep. All right, nailed it. We're out of here.
Damn.
Wow.
Well done, sir.
That was under
Victory is
pressure.
yours. This was best case scenario for you. Worst
Yeah,
case
no, that
scenario
was-
for DK and I at the end of the podcast.
We had to try.
I'm just
did.
I'm the maestro of pronunciation. I think that's
You
where
are.
I'm at,
All right. Well, I
The
appreciate you both taking the
Maestro
time. Hi-
fiasco.
Anyway,
great.
appreciate you, buddy, being the pinata. Pinata.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, the pinate. Yeah, no, that's me.
Pinata. Yeah. All right, they're Danny
Pinata.
Kelly, Danny Heifetz of the NFL, the Ringer NFL Draft Show. Find everything on theringer.com. You guys are the best, and I can't wait to see you. Hopefully before the combine next year. At least we'll hang and reconnect sometime soon. All right.
Absolutely.
Hey, thanks, man. Get ready for Bo Nix and Matt Patricia.
It's happening.
Okay, marching on with our latest mail fan segment. This is Nick Roy. He is from Maine, but currently calling in from Richmond, Virginia. And initially, Nick, you pitched me on a question that was like, why the blank, this is editorializing, should I renew my season ticket at this point? You've done a 180 to come around, and I'll just read your question right away if you want to ad-lib by all means.
Sure.
But your new question could not be more different. Instead of 3 reasons to renew, you're asking for 3 reasons, amid all the doom and gloom, to be optimistic about the New England Patriots. And I'm so glad you asked this. I just told you off the air we might do a whole episode. But you tell me, what are 3 reasons we should be optimistic about the Patriots here in 2024?
It's tough, right? We're coming off a coaching change. Obviously, the greatest coach of all time we've lost. I think one thing that I am optimistic about in terms of the new direction is this, like, and they've telegraphed this a little bit, but like, we just haven't been good enough the last 3 years to bench our young players, right? And I think getting those young players some snaps, allowing them to grow in the offense, not having that, you know, that short leash. I was at that Miami game where Demario Douglas fumbled. I can't imagine that being a good reason to take a player that talented off the field, especially with, you know, everything else we were putting out there, especially at that position. So playing young players, I think that's something to look forward to. Obviously with the high draft picks, I think that'll be important. The defense, I think, is going to be good again. I think they played really well last year at, you know, that stretch where they held opponents to less than 10 points and lost 3 games in a row. That was hard to stomach in the moment, but like those guys were playing so well. There's a lot of toughness there. I think, you know, the continuity on the defensive side of the ball is something to be optimistic about. I mean, in terms of the third thing, this is where we run out of road. I guess, you know, whatever they do with this top draft pick, right? Whether they trade it and accumulate picks or bring in that new quarterback, like that will be something to be optimistic about, although I'm sure it'll be dissected to death. So I'm anxious to hear what you have to say. The season ticket renewal deadline is in 2 days. I'm a procrastinator, so I'm going to renew. But it's not an easy choice, and maybe you'll help me make the case to my wife about why that money's coming out of our checking account.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. I think it's a lot like, you know, if we're just going to stick with the season tickets here for a second. This year, much like the Patriots, is just going to be the opportunity to renew for 2025 and beyond, right? Like the team is aiming for 2025. They're going to play the kids now. They're going to take their growing pains and then be in position to maybe compete next year and beyond. That stinks now. You feel like you might be wasting some money here, but I'll give you a reason. I mean, you finished on the draft pick, which absolutely is going to be dissected to death and then post-mortem and then brought back to life and dissected again, is the quarterback. I still think they're going to go quarterback at 3. You'll have these flashes of brilliance and upside. It might just be a play. It could be a quarter. Ideally, it's a whole game, right? Or maybe a week or a month. But that you have not seen, you and I have not seen in 5 years, at least. Like some sort of upside with Jane Daniels or Drake May. Mac, incredibly efficient, good game manager, all the things we said in 21. Physically limited. That's my number 1. I mean, are you in agreement there? At least, like, if you're making the pitch to your wife, that's a hard sell. Like, come watch this 21-year-old kid come play quarterback.
Absolutely. The athletic upside of the quarterback position will be a good thing.
Yeah. All right, number 2, and this is a harder case to make when you check in with the betting folks. And my friend Fitzy just reminded me of this. The over/under for the Patriots right now, this is pre-draft, for wins next season is 4.5. So they've come down from last year. And again, we're being optimistic, not necessarily because they're going to exceed that or win a ton, but the schedule is easier. You cannot get harder than the number 1 most difficult schedule in the league, which is what they had last year. And I started to list some teams here for you, Nick, and be like, oh, they'll play this, they could win that game. And the list got maybe 2 or 3 teams deep. But I do think overall, there's not going to be this murderer's row where I remember texting with a couple players last year and they're like, wow, there's no breaks in here. Like we go to 0-2, we're in trouble. Lo and behold, we all saw that happen. Do you have any teams though? Like let me list off a couple and you tell me how you feel about them.
Yeah.
And everyone's right in their peak form, right? These are best case scenarios. Arizona's going to be great. The Bears, the Colts, the Jets twice. You get the Rams. Niners will be exciting. Granted, it's in San Francisco. Seattle's going to come in. And then you're looking at more. I think it's the AFC South. So Titans, Jags, Texans, and I already mentioned the Colts. Any of those teams you feel better maybe than you should?
You know, there's a couple teams in there with like questions at quarterback. The Seahawks, we feasted on playing bad quarterbacks the last couple of years, and that hasn't always resulted in wins. But like I do think there's the quality of quarterbacks on the schedule this year is just so much worse than it was last year. And so I think that'll benefit us immensely, or us.
Yeah,
my
right.
favorite.
And so there's our second reason. My number 3 is the same one you mentioned. It's just the kids, right? And Elliot Wolf is publicly proclaimed, we're going to play the young players more. That's how they develop. They get time. And granted, the Patriots are actively trying to win last year, make the playoffs, go back, get an upset, build on something that just obviously the foundation wasn't there from the offensive line, the receivers. We talked about it all. Looking ahead, Pop Douglas is up there. Christian Gonzalez might be the best player in this team when we look at week 5 and be like, it's not even close.
Yep.
Keon White is someone I think could have a year or two leap. And then even guys who aren't technically rookies, technically young guys, like Josh Uche is a younger guy, but he's going to be going into his 5th season. I still think there's, maybe I'm just still drunk on Josh Uche wine here, like bounce back. He's had for 1 year, $3 million. If Mayo and Belichick or Steve Belichick had a difference in how to use him, if Mayo gets his say, maybe that's a better alternative. Maybe it's not, but I just think there are enough young guys in the roster. You'll see something different because they're also just going to get the runway to find and realize whatever potential they have.
The Uche thing is a great example. I mean, I was thinking the same thing when they re-signed him. The hesitancy to use him on early downs, I understand it, but it's just like I don't think we can afford to take any good athletes off the field at any time. And so that's a guy I'd love to see out there more. And it's based on his relationship with Mayo, how he's talked about him. I don't know if I heard him on your podcast or Tom Curran's, but it seems like he's going to be in a good place this year. I'm excited to see what he does.
Yeah, he's grown a whole lot. And he and I have had really, I would say, personal conversations, which is to say I'm not going to divulge any details, but in the stuff he's told me on the record, even just about what Belichick meant to him or his growth in terms of mental health, has been extraordinary. Like I would hope that for any 25-year-old who went through, kind of some formative late teens, early 20s years, COVID, everything else that's going on in the world, and the way he's developed in that area, it gives you hope. Maybe you see more on field. And clearly the guy wants to be here because he passed up multiple guaranteed millions of dollars to stay.
Yeah.
Anything else that, we say in the biz you're hot on, or things that are top of mind that you agree with, want to get off your chest, or just thinking right now about the Patriots?
I mean, I did watch the Dynasty. I heard Robert Kraft's comments about it yesterday. I don't tend to subscribe to the idea that, he's sitting there in the editing room watching sort of how the thing came together. I do think years from now that the Krafts and other people in the organization are going to regret how this breakup period went. Like, I think it could have gone better. Bill Belichick's a legendary figure in a lot of ways. I love the guy and have a ton of respect for him and what he's been able to accomplish. Kraft mentioned him coming for a retirement ceremony. I don't know that we should be so sure about that. Like, I feel like the Patriots could have done a better job managing that relationship. And I think it would have benefited the organization and the fan base quite a bit.
I think it's completely fair. And I think we already have an example in terms of regret about breakups, right? Tom Brady. I still don't subscribe to the argument that if he stayed in 2020, that team is going anywhere. You just look at the roster, the dead cap. But they obviously regretted not just siding with Bill, but I think the messaging, because it was so clear that they tried to dump that in Tom's lap. This is his decision. Well, what happens when you back someone into a corner? Their only option is to fight out. And you're like, well, he fought his way out. What else was he going to do? And with Bill, I think this is the same way, except for he stayed silent. And honestly, everyone else has done the fighting for him as far as the dynasty goes and how things really went in the last few weeks. Granted, his record was what it was. The draft classes were what they were. We've all examined it. But I think that's totally fair. All right, Nick Roy, he is someone who flew from Virginia to watch the Chargers game last year, 6-0 in the rain. Bailey Zappi's debut. They didn't score any points. They gave up 2 field goals and still lost. I appreciate you listening. Thank you very much for donating to Boston Children's. And a reminder, as I said at the top, anyone who wants to join the show, do what Nick did. Tweet me, email me, show the proof of receipt. We'll have you on. And it could be event session. It could be optimistic, whatever you want. Nick's done a little bit of both. And I really appreciate the time, man.
Appreciate you too. Thanks so much.